Hey, who allowed this trash to stand at the front of a classroom? Braden Cole's hissed voice echoed through the main hallway. 40 students held their breath, and nobody made a sound. Gavin Briggs, the new English teacher, stood still like a stone. "I'm talking to you, you freeloader." Braden stepped closer and blew hot cigarette breath right into his face. Gavin looked straight into his eyes and said, "I came here to teach." Braden sneered, snatched the lesson plans from his hands, and shoved Gavin hard onto the floor. The 6 coaches standing around burst into loud laughter. "Stay down there, you scum." Gavin's face did not change at all. He quietly picked up each sheet of paper with strong hands that never shook once. These were not the hands of a scared teacher, but the hands of a battle-tested Marine Drill Instructor. Braden Cole just pushed the wrong man, and he did not know the high price he would pay. To understand why Gavin stayed so calm on that cold floor, we need to go back 9 days. Back to the quiet Monday morning, when his ordinary life at Pine Creek still looked simple. At 7:08 that morning, Gavin's old Ford F-150 rattled up to the elementary school gate. The truck had a dent above the left wheel from a Detroit pothole. His daughter Amara, 7 years old, unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed over to hug his neck. "Don't forget my inhaler, Daddy," she said. "The old one only has a little puff left." Gavin brushed her braids back and smiled. It was the only real smile he gave all day. He still owed $1,420.80 for her last asthma treatment. He did not tell her that part. Before he pulled away from the curb, Gavin touched a small leather pouch clipped near the gear shift. Inside sat a pair of cracked work gloves that once belonged to his father. The leather had gone stiff and dark with age, worn thin at every knuckle. His father wore those gloves laying brick for 31 years in Flint. Gavin never used them for work. He kept them close just to remember the man who raised him to stay humble and stay strong. Amara wheezed a little at breakfast that morning, a soft whistle in her chest. Gavin knelt beside her chair and counted her breaths the way a nurse once showed him. "Slow down, baby girl," he said gently. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." Her breathing settled after a minute, and she grinned up at him like nothing happened. Gavin's own chest stayed tight the whole drive to school, even after her breathing calmed. He drove 3 blocks to Pine Creek High School. The building smelled like old paper and wet concrete. Room 204 leaked every time it rained hard, and 3 ceiling tiles had brown water rings. Gavin set his bag on a wobbly desk and pulled out his lesson on Frederick Douglass. His shirt was thin from years of washing, bought secondhand from shop on Finkel Avenue, but it hung pressed and clean on his broad shoulders. Nobody who saw him standing at that chalkboard would guess he once broke grown men down to nothing at Paris Island. Pine Creek sat inside a tired industrial stretch of Michigan. Cracked brick walls lined the halls, painted over since the 80s. The old heating pipes clicked and groaned every winter morning. A faint smell of rust drifted through the vents whenever the heat kicked on. The gym always smelled like damp rubber mats and old sweat, mixed with something sharp like bleach. Cold air leaked through the window frames in room 204, brushing against Gavin's arms as he wrote on the board. It was not a rich school. It was not a kind school either, not for everyone. Gavin taught his first class with steady hands and a calm, even voice. He wrote 3 words on the chalkboard in tall, clean letters: freedom, dignity, and voice. A few students in the back row snickered at his second-hand shoes. Gavin did not flinch. He simply asked them to open their books to page 9. He read a short passage out loud, his voice slow and clear. A quiet girl near the window raised her hand for the first time all semester. She asked what dignity really meant for someone who had nothing. Gavin set his book down on the desk and thought for a moment. "Dignity means you decide your own worth," he said. "Nobody else gets to hand it to you, and nobody gets to take it away." The room stayed quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. Students actually listened. At 10:15, during the short break between classes, Gavin turned a corner and stopped. Two football players had Toby Jenkins pinned against a row of lockers. Toby was 16, thin and quiet, the kind of kid who kept his eyes on the floor. One player ripped his backpack away and poured a carton of milk over his head. Toby did not fight back. He just stood there, dripping, saying nothing. Gavin walked over without raising his voice. He did not grab anyone. He simply stood between Toby and the two players, arms loose at his sides. His shoulders filled the hallway. Something about his stillness made both boys step back. They dropped the backpack on the tile floor and walked away fast, muttering under their breath. Gavin knelt down and picked up Toby's soaked backpack. Milk dripped onto the tile in slow, steady drops. "You okay?" Gavin asked quietly. Toby wiped his face with his sleeve and nodded, though his hands still shook a little. Neither of them said much else. Gavin just walked him to the nearest bathroom and waited outside the door. Braden Cole watched the whole thing from afar into the hall. He was the head football coach and the head of the physical education department. He had run this school like his own backyard for 17 years. That afternoon, he walked into room 204 and flicked a lit cigarette onto the floor by the door. "Stay out of my program's business," he said, his voice low and mean. "Keep sticking your nose in, and you won't have this job passed next month." Braden believed every word he said. In his mind, he was not a bully at all. He saw himself as the man who kept Pine Creek's football program strong and disciplined. He told himself that hard rules built hard men, and soft teachers only weakened the school. He truly believed he was protecting standards, not breaking them. That belief made him dangerous because he never once questioned his own cruelty. That night, Gavin sat in his small rented apartment and watched Amara sleep. Unpaid bills sat in a stack on the kitchen table. The rent was 2 weeks late. He knew one wrong move could put them both on the street. He thought about his years at Paris Island. Back then, he was a senior drill instructor who could silence a room with one word. Now he was just a broke single father trying to keep his head down. He slid his old military ID card into a locked box under his bed and told himself to stay quiet for Amara's sake. But quiet did not last long. 2 days later, Toby knocked on the door of room 204 after school. He handed Gavin an essay about self-respect, his hands trembling slightly. There was a fresh bruise under his left eye from something that happened in the parking lot. "Mr. Briggs," Toby said, his voice cracking, "why do bad people always win? Are we supposed to just accept it because we're poor?" That question hit Gavin harder than any punch ever could. He realized he was teaching freedom and dignity from a textbook while living like a coward in real life. He remembered his father's words before he passed away. "Never use your strength to hurt people. Use your discipline to protect the ones who can't protect themselves." Something shifted in Gavin's chest right then. He decided silence was over. He would fight back, not with his fists, but with discipline and the law. The next day, Gavin bought a small black notebook for $4.50 at a shop on Grand River Avenue. He began writing down every incident involving Braden Cole and his crew. He noted the date, the time, the place, and any witnesses who saw it happen. He also mounted a small battery-powered dash camera behind his truck's windshield, running around the clock. He called Cassandra Drake, an old friend from his Marine days who now worked as a veterans' rights attorney in Detroit. Her voice was calm and sharp, the same voice he remembered from basic training years ago. "Braden's been there 17 years, she warned him over the phone. "He's got protection built into the walls of that school. You need a solid chain of evidence before you make any legal move." "How long will that take?" Gavin asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "Depends how patient you are," Cassandra said. "Write down everything. Dates, times, names. Don't skip a single detail, no matter how small it feels." "And if they come after my job, before I'm ready?" Gavin asked. "Then you stay calmer than they are," Cassandra answered. "Men like Braden Cole win when people react with anger. You beat him by refusing to give him that." Gavin sat, with the phone pressed to his ear for a long moment, letting her words settle. He had heard That same lesson once before, shouted across a training field in South Carolina. Gavin agreed. He began a plan that would take 25 careful days to build. Every night after Amara fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table and added new lines to his notebook. His handwriting stayed neat and steady even when his hands were tired from grading papers all day. Braden noticed Gavin's strange calm and did not like it one bit. One rainy night, someone slashed both back tires on Gavin's truck in the staff parking lot. His dash camera caught a heavy shape moving near the truck at 8:12 that evening. The figure matched Dusty Payne, one of Braden's 5 assistant coaches. Rain soaked through Gavin's jacket as he stood staring at his flattened tires. His jaw tightened, but he did not shout or curse. He simply pulled out his phone, saved the footage, and wrote it down as entry number 8 in his notebook. He called a tow truck the next morning and paid for 2 new tires out of his own thin savings. Toby became Gavin's quiet ally during those tense weeks. He offered to use his old phone to film anything Braden's crew tried in the hallways or the parking lot. He said he was tired of watching from the sidelines. He wanted to help somehow, even in a small way. "Won't they just take my phone?" Toby asked, nervous, fidgeting with the cracked screen. "Keep your distance," Gavin told him. "Never put yourself in danger for this. Your safety matters more than any video." Toby nodded slowly, gripping his phone a little tighter. From then on, he started carrying it charged and ready, tucked deep in his jacket pocket. Word about their quiet partnership never spread beyond the two of them. Toby still ate lunch alone most days, keeping his head down like before. But something in his posture had started to change. He walked a little straighter through the halls now, like he had a secret worth protecting. Then Principal Raymond Garrity cut the English department's book budget by $350. He moved the money straight into new football helmets at Braden's request. Gavin walked into the office to ask why. Garrity barely looked up from his desk. "Football feeds this school, not your stack of paperbacks," he snapped, waving Gavin off like a fly. "Those books teach kids how to think," Gavin said, keeping his voice level. "Kids need discipline more than they need Douglas," Garrity shot back. "Ask Coach Cole. He knows what this town wants." Gavin stood there a moment longer, saying nothing else. He turned and walked out, the office door clicking shut behind him. He added the conversation to his notebook that same night, word for word. Braden decided to end things once and for all. He announced a mandatory Pine Creek Fitness Challenge for every male teacher that Saturday morning. Parents would watch. School board members would watch too, including board chair Beatrice Holloway. He wanted every eye in town on Gavin's failure. Word of the challenge spread through Pine Creek within a single afternoon. Some parents laughed along with Braden, certain the quiet English teacher would embarrass himself. Others felt a strange, uneasy pull to show up and watch anyway. Nobody in town had ever seen Braden Cole truly challenged before. Over the school intercom, Braden mocked Gavin by name. "Let's see how our weak little single dad holds up against real men," he sneered into the microphone. He was certain Gavin would either skip the event or collapse trying. He had no idea what waited under Gavin's calm surface. The night before the challenge, Gavin opened the locked box under his bed. He pulled out his old Marine combat boots and wiped years of dust off the leather. He tightened the laces slowly, one loop at a time. He called Cassandra one more time. He built his own stage, Gavin told her quietly. "Tomorrow, we finish this." Saturday morning arrived hot and heavy over the football field. The sun beat down on rows of folding chairs filled with parents and neighbors. Popcorn and cut grass mixed together in the warm air. Braden and his 5 assistants stretched loudly, showing off for the crowd, slapping each other's backs. Gavin walked out in a plain gray shirt and his worn combat boots, the same boots his father once shined for him before boot camp. When the whistle blew, Braden sprinted off fast, but ran out of breath climbing the rope. Gavin moved like a machine built for exactly this moment. He climbed the rope with a clean break and squat technique from his drill instructor days. He cleared the 6-foot wall with one smooth jump. He crossed the finish line 19 seconds ahead of Braden, and the crowd went dead silent. Braden's face turned a deep, ugly red in front of everyone he wanted to impress. Veins pushed up along his neck, thick and pulsing. Rage burned through him, hot and sudden. He stormed over and shoved Gavin hard from behind. His 5 assistant coaches closed in fast, forming a tight circle around him. Braden swung a heavy fist straight at Gavin's face. Gavin's training took over in an instant. His jaw locked tight, and his eyes went sharp and cold. He never threw a single punch of his own. He did not want any charge of violence hanging over his name. He sidestepped the swing and caught Braden's wrist, twisting him down onto the grass. Braden's knees buckled, and a strangled grunt escaped his throat. When Todd Miller and Greg Thorne lunged in next, Gavin swept their legs out with a smooth, practice motion. Both men hit the ground hard, dust rising around their bodies. Shane Becker grabbed for Gavin's shoulder and ended up flat on his back a second later, gasping for air. In just 45 seconds, all 6 men lay groaning on the field, without a single open wound between them. The crowd stood frozen, hands over their mouths, not one person making a sound. From the bleachers, Toby's phone quietly recorded every last second of it. That video ran exactly 13 minutes and 18 seconds. It spread across local Michigan groups online before the sun even went down that Saturday. It showed the coach's ugly arrogance next to Gavin's calm, controlled defense. Parents and students who had suffered under Braden's crew for years started sending Gavin quiet messages of support. For the first time, people saw that this small-town power system could actually be broken. Gavin held Amara close that night, knowing the real fight was only just beginning. On Monday at 5:30 in the afternoon, Principal Garrity signed papers suspending Gavin without pay. The charge read assault against a colleague, though everyone who watched the video knew the truth. At the same moment, Garrity ordered the school's IT staff to erase the stadium security footage. He wanted every trace of evidence gone before anyone asked questions. Braden and his 5 coaches filed assault charges against Gavin at the county courthouse. A local news station ran the story using an old, badly lit staff photo of Gavin. They painted him as a dangerous, violent teacher who threatened student safety. Gavin faced the real threat of a courtroom trial and even losing custody of Amara. His stomach twisted every time he imagined Amara growing up without him nearby. He turned off his phone, just as Cassandra advised, and ran 5 miles every single morning to keep his mind steady. Some mornings his hands trembled while he laced up his boots, but he never once considered giving up. Word spread fast through Pine Creek that week, and not everyone believed the news story. Toby showed his video to 2 other students who had also been bullied by Braden's crew. One of them, a quiet junior named Marcus, had kept his own list of dates and threats in a notebook of his own. Slowly, more small pieces of proof started finding their way to Cassandra's office downtown. Thursday morning, the school auditorium filled to the last row of seats. Board Chair Beatrice Holloway called the public hearing to order at 10 o'clock sharp. Braden's lawyer stood first and waved around a stack of fake injury reports. He demanded Gavin's immediate termination from the district, his voice full of false confidence. Cassandra Drake rose slowly and did not argue about the fight at all. Her voice stayed level and calm as she addressed the board. Instead, she played the full 13-minute video on the big screen, completely unedited. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they watched Braden throw the first punch. A few parents in the front row covered their mouths in shock. Next, she presented Gavin's small notebook filled with 14 separate documented incidents. She read 3 entries aloud, slow and clear, letting each date and detail sink in. Former teachers who had quietly quit under Braden's pressure had signed their names as witnesses. One retired teacher, Mrs. Odessa Kane, stood up from the back row. "I left this school 2 years ago because of that man," she said, her voice shaking. "I should have spoken up sooner." Then Cassandra delivered her final blow. She announced an independent audit of the Student Sports Equipment Fund, the one Braden controlled. The numbers were stark and impossible to argue with. Braden had stolen exactly $23,415.62 over 3 years. He had spent most of it at casino tables across Detroit. Principal Garrity's face went pale as paper when the next piece of evidence played. His fingers gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. A recorded phone call from 10:42 the previous Monday night filled the room. In it, Garrity and Braden clearly discussed deleting the security footage together. The whole auditorium sat frozen, nobody breathing, nobody moving in their seats. Somewhere near the back, an old ceiling fan clicked, with every slow turn the only sound left in the room. Braden lost every ounce of control right there in front of the board. He screamed and lunged toward Cassandra, his face twisted and red. 2 county police officers grabbed him before he got close and snapped on the handcuffs. Metal clicked shut around his wrists, and his shoulders sagged all at once. Sweat rolled down his temple, and his breath came in short, ragged bursts. Reporters near the back of the room caught every second of it on camera. His 5 assistant coaches sat frozen in their chairs, unable to look up. Dusty Payne stared at the floor, his hands pressed flat against his knees. Board Chair Beatrice Holloway banged her small gavel twice to restore order. "This hearing is adjourned," she said, her voice tight with disbelief. "The board will reconvene tomorrow to vote on next steps." She looked over at Gavin and gave a small, tired nod, as if to say she finally understood. Gavin sat quietly, through it all, his hands resting calm on his knees. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply watched the truth finally come out into the light, exactly as he planned. The board reinstated Gavin the following week, with full back pay for every missed day. He declined the board's late, awkward apology and asked for only one thing in return. He wanted an independent oversight committee created to protect students and teachers from future abuse. Beatrice Holloway agreed on the spot, and the motion passed without a single objection. Garrity resigned in disgrace before the district could formally fire him. Braden Cole and his 5 coaches faced charges of assault, evidence tampering, and embezzlement. None of them ever set foot inside Pine Creek High School again. News of the hearing spread through the whole town within a single day. Neighbors who once looked away now stopped Gavin outside the grocery store to shake his hand. An old man who had lived on Maple Street for decades told Gavin he should have spoken up against Braden years ago. A few parents brought over casseroles, embarrassed they had stayed silent for so long. Toby's mother hugged Gavin, so tight at the hardware store that he almost dropped his paint cans. Slowly, Pine Creek began to feel less like a place that broke people down. Even Beatrice Holloway stopped by room 2041 one afternoon just to see how Gavin was doing. She admitted the board should have listened to complaints years earlier. Gavin only nodded and told her it was never too late to fix a broken system. She left with a small stack of his students' essays, promising to read every single one. Gavin watched her car pull out of the parking lot, feeling something close to peace settle over him for the first time in months. 1 year later, a grand hall in downtown Detroit filled with teachers, families, and proud school leaders. The Michigan Outstanding Teacher Award ceremony was about to begin under bright golden lights. Toby Jenkins, now a confident senior, walked up to the podium without a single shake in his hands. He no longer pressed himself against walls or kept his eyes down when he walked. He looked out at the crowd and spoke clearly into the microphone. "Mr. Gavin Briggs didn't just teach us English," Toby said, his voice steady and strong. "He taught us what we're worth and how to stand tall against unfair things." He looked out at the crowd one more time before stepping back from the microphone. The room erupted into applause that seemed to shake the walls. Gavin walked up onto that stage, steady and calm, as always, and accepted his award. His fingers brushed the small leather pouch he still carried in his jacket pocket, holding his father's old gloves. The applause lasted nearly 2 full minutes, echoing through the packed hall. Down in the crowd, Amara sat in her seat, holding her father's trophy tight against her chest. Her smile stretched wide across her whole face, bright and unshaken. She had watched her father stay calm through every storm that year. Now she watched him rise, exactly the way he always told her good people do. After the ceremony, Cassandra found Gavin near the refreshment table and hugged him tight. "You did this the hard way," she said, smiling. "The right way, too." Gavin laughed softly, something he rarely allowed himself to do in public. He thanked her for pushing him to build his case, one careful entry at a time. Toby stood nearby, holding a small paper plate of cookies, grinning ear to ear. He had grown 3 inches since that day in the hallway. His shyness had faded even more than his height had grown. He shook Gavin's hand firmly, the same way Gavin had once taught him to. "I'm going to be a teacher too, someday," Toby said, his eyes bright under the ceremony lights. Gavin squeezed his shoulder and told him he already carried the heart for it. Back at Pine Creek, in the old room 204, one line still remained on the whiteboard. Nobody had ever bothered to erase it, not even during summer cleaning. Gavin had written it there in dark, permanent marker months before that day, and it stayed. Lesson number 1, know your own worth. His new self-defense and anti-bullying program, called Stand Up Pine Creek, kept growing that spring. It taught students simple ways to protect themselves without ever throwing the first punch. It also taught them how to write things down and speak up when something felt wrong. 12 other schools across Michigan adopted the same program within just 1 year. Teachers who once stayed silent, just like Gavin once had, finally started speaking up too. Students who once got shoved to the floor started standing taller in their own hallways. Toby helped Gavin run the very first weekend workshop, standing at the front of the room without a single tremble in his hands. And somewhere in downtown Detroit, in a small worn apartment above a laundromat, a father and daughter sat down for dinner. Gavin poured Amara a glass of milk and set it gently in front of her plate. He no longer counted late bills at that table every single night. He simply watched his daughter laugh at something silly on her phone screen, and he let himself smile again, fully and without fear this time. Later that night, he tucked Amara into bed and set his father's old gloves on the dresser beside her nightlight. She asked him, half asleep, why he always kept them so close. "Because they remind me who I am," he said softly, "no matter what anyone else calls me." Amara smiled and closed her eyes, already drifting off to sleep. The man they once called trash now stood as living proof that quiet strength always outlasts loud cruelty.